What's going on, everyone? In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this scene using nothing but primitives and just some basic modeling techniques. But before we get started, make sure to watch last week's video, since we will be building on some of the topics that we covered there. The link for that video will be in the description. And if you would like to follow along with the tutorial, I have enabled the screencast keys to capture every mouse click and every button press down here at the bottom right. So let's get started by deleting all of the objects in the scene, since we won't be needing those for now. And let's add a circle mesh object. And down here at the bottom left, there's going to be this little drop down menu. So you want to expand that, and let's change the vertex count to 6. To make it a hexagon. And now let's tab into edit mode. Let's press F to fill that in, and let's extrude it up. That's a good amount for now. We can always again play around with it later. Now let's tab out of edit mode, and we're going to add some modifiers to this hexagon shape. So let's open up the modifier tab, and let's add a bevel modifier. And let's increase the segments to 2 and lower the distance here, the amount. That should be just about right. I'm going to shade smooth. And now that we have enabled the smooth shading, you can see that the shading is a little off, a little messed up here. So let's fix that by going over to the object data properties. Click here on the normals drop down and enable auto smooth. Okay, and once you have that, head on back over to the bevel modifier and enable harden normals. So that should fix up that problem with the shading there. Okay, so this will be the basic platform in which all the other objects will stand on. And now let's quickly hide this, and we're going to work on the first tree object. So first, let's start with the trunk. We're going to add a cube mesh, and tab into edit mode and scale it down. That should be enough. Select this top face, head into the front view, and we're going to just move this up in the Z direction. That should be fine for now. And then press A to highlight everything, and we're going to move this tree up just a little bit so that it is standing on top of this axis right here, on top of the x-axis. Okay, let's tab back out into object mode, and let's add a quick bevel modifier. Again, increase the number of segments and then just decrease the amount. So you can hold down shift to lower the increments. And then again, shade smooth. That's going to mess up the shading a little bit. So go ahead and enable harden normals. Head on over to the object properties and enable auto smooth. Okay, now let's make that first tree. Let's add a cube object and scale it down and move it up. Now tab into edit mode, select the top face, and we're going to scale it down. And that should be enough. Press A to highlight everything, and we're going to scale this in the Z direction. And scale it in by pressing S and then shift to Z. Okay, so now we just need to smooth it out a little bit. And we're going to add the bevel modifier again, once more. Increase the segment and lower the amount. There's the shading options. Click on harden normals and enable the auto smooth in the object properties. and then shade smooth. Okay, and that is the first tree. Very last thing that we have to do is just parent this to the trunk. So press Ctrl P and parent to the object. Okay, and that takes care of the first type of tree. Let's make the next one, the cone shaped one. So first I'm gonna just reuse this trunk object. I'm gonna create a link duplicate by pressing Alt D. Right click to cancel any movement. I'm gonna select the original tree and hide it. Okay, so now let's add a cylinder object. We can lower the amount, something like 16 should work here, or actually even less than that, 8 should be fine. Now move it up just like we did with the other tree. Tab into edit mode, select the top face and scale it way down. Then press A to select the entire object. Press S and then Shift Z to scale it down. So, like so. Let's tab out of that. Okay, so now let's add two modifiers to this object. We're gonna first add the bevel modifier and change the angle to 60 degrees. And once we do that, let's quickly add the subdivision surface modifier and increase the level to 2. Now back in the bevel modifier, you can increase the number of segments to maybe 3, and then you can play around with the amount, but I'm just gonna leave it here the way that it is now. And then lastly, make sure to shade smooth. There you have it. There's the next tree, and I'm just gonna quickly scale this down just to make it fit a little bit better. And lastly, let's parent this object to the trunk and make a linked duplicate of the trunk. Let's hide that cone tree. And the next tree that we're going to make is the capsule tree. And in order to do that, you're going to need to enable the extra objects add-on, which can be found under your preferences. So I'll quickly show you how to do that. You go to Edit, Preferences, in the Add-ons tab, search for Extra Objects, and you want to select this second option here, and X out of that. And now press Shift A and head on over to the rounded cube. And here in the operator presets, we're going to select Capsule. And so that just gives us a simple capsule shape. We don't really need to mess around a whole lot with this. You can just simply enter edit mode, scale it down, tab out of edit mode and move it up, and then just mess around with the shape in edit mode. So if you want to scale it out, make it a little bit thicker, and I think that shape looks alright. Now I don't think we're gonna need any modifiers on this, so let's shade smooth, and that looks okay. And let's quickly just scale down this trunk. Alright, let's quickly finish that by parenting the tree to the trunk, the capsule to the trunk. Let's create a link duplicate and hide the capsule tree. The very last shape that we're going to be using is actually pretty much a copy of the cone tree, except we're going to divide the tree into 3 segments. So let's quickly recreate that cone shape. Let's add a cylinder, move it up, enter edit mode and scale it down. And this one we're gonna have to scale it down a lot just so we can have the 3 segments. Select the top face, scale it down. Exit edit mode, add the bevel modifier, increase the number of segments to about 3. We're going to set the angles to 60, and then enable the subdivision surface modifier and increase the levels for that as well. Shade smooth, and there you have the shape of the tree that we're going to go for. So now let's move this down to be our base. Select this bottom face here and then just scale it out. And we're going to create a link duplicate of this shape, move it in the Z direction, and do that once more. And we can mess around with the scale. Start scaling this down, like so. And I can see here that the trunk is sticking out, so we can just bring that top face down. Okay, and the very last thing, because I think this tree is a little bit too thick, I'm going to scale it in the Z direction, like so. And now we can parent the objects to the trunk. So select them all, with the trunk being the last object selected. Press Ctrl P and parent the object. So now let's hide this object, so highlight it, press H. Let's start with the circle platform, the hexagon platform I should call it, and start moving it around. So I'm going to press 7 on the numpad to enter top view, select the object, and create a duplicate. If you hold down Ctrl, you'll be able to snap the movement. And move it there, and then create another duplicate. Snap it to just about there, that's fine. And we're going to create one more. So there we have it. And we're going to mess around with how high some of these go. Select the top face, press G, then Z. That'll be fine for that one. I'm going to make this one a little bit taller. And then this one will kind of be in between, like so. And I can see that this one here is kind of going into the other hexagon, so let's move it in a little bit closer and just fix that. That should just about do it. Okay. Now let's start with the first tree object. So let's unhide that by clicking on this little eye icon. And we won't be able to see it because it's actually inside of this hexagon shape. So if we select the object in the outliner and just move it in the Z direction, you should be able to see the trunk, and in order to see the rest of it, you can unhide the cube. That was the child of that object. And now let's scale this down and just position it to where we'd like. And highlight the entire tree and maybe create some link duplicates just to add some variety to the scene, and just mess around with the scaling of these objects as well, along with the rotation. Okay, now in the outliner, unhide the next tree object along with the child object, so that will be the cone tree. Select it in the outliner, and now we can move it up. We're going to place it on this platform here. Now you just have to mess around with the scaling. Let's create some link duplicates. And we're just going to repeat that process for the remaining tree shapes. Okay, so once you have the objects where you want them, you can add a camera object. And then just move it out. And then just roughly position it to where you think it'll go. So I think that will be just fine. Toggle on the camera view and press Shift tilde to move the camera with your mouse and the WASD keys. So I think something like this should be just fine. Let's modify the dimensions. Let's make this 1600 by 1200. Okay, now zoom in by pressing G and then hitting Z twice. Okay, now let's add a ground object, so press Shift A, and the plane will do for now, and let's scale it out. So, and now let's rotate the camera on its x-axis and bring it up. Okay, and just continue messing around with this. Until you get the placement of the camera where you want it. Let's scale up the plane a little bit more. And now it's time to add some materials and lighting. Okay, so let's add some basic materials to this scene. Let's head on over to the shading tab. And click on this first hexagon. We're going to add a new material. Let's make that a yellowish tint, yellow-green, something like that. And let's increase the roughness. Let's click on this next one. We can make it an orange-pink color, like so, and also increase the roughness. This one will make a purple-ish color. And then finally we can make this one a green color, like so. And we can continue to mess around with the materials later on, but I think for a start this is good, and increase the roughness for this one as well. Okay, now let's click on these cubic trees. I don't know of a better name to call them. Let's make these a red color. Or red orange, something like that will do. Let's make these cone trees a darker orange. And let's also increase the roughness. I forgot to do that for the cubic trees. There we go. Okay, and for these capsule trees, we can make them a pink color, just to keep that monochromatic somewhat. Also increase the roughness of that. And then the pine tree, we can make that a dark green. And increase the roughness. And if you use link duplicates, then all of the materials should be getting copied over. And the last thing for us to modify is the trunk color, and since these should all be link duplicates, just turn it to this brownish color, something like that, and increase the roughness. Now the ground plane, make this a slight pink or a slight orange. It's not really going to matter too much. Maybe something like that. Okay, and now let's add some lights to the scene. So let's head on back to the layout tab and change over to the material preview. click here on this arrow, let's turn on the scene lights and the scene world. So that way we can see the lights and how they interact with the materials. So let's add a quick area light and move that up. Increase the strength to maybe 1500. Let's make the shape a disc. And let's increase the size so that we get rid of those harsh shadows. And rotate this light negative 130 degrees, just about in the Z direction. Now let's move it outwards a little bit and scale it down or decrease the size. We're going to change the color to a slight yellowish orange. And maybe decrease the power to 1000. Now we're going to copy this top light one more time and rotate it 45 degrees. Can decrease the size, and let's make this a purple color. And decrease the power to maybe 1000 again. And let's bring it out. And you know what? Let's just rotate it down. Okay, that seems to work just fine. Let's copy this top light one last time. Rotate it into negative 45. Decrease the size. Disable the shadows. And change this to a blue light. Okay, and maybe let's bring the power down to 500. Move it down. Move it closer to the scene. So, and let's bring this light up. And change the color to maybe something like that. Well, you can mess around with it, but I think making it a red tone or an orange tone is going to be good here. And now it's just about messing with the lights, the colors, and the materials, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that I've messed around with some of the lighting and material, I'm just going to change the render engine to cycles and then switch over to the render preview. Okay, and I think it looks just about done. Just going to modify this color a little bit. So, under the render properties, make sure you change your render samples to 512. Check off some of these adaptive sampling and denoising options. And go ahead and render your image. Okay, so once I rendered the scene, I really wasn't happy with the color scheme. Just the green one seemed to look out of place, so I quickly redid the material for that column, for that hexagon. And this is the final render. And now just make sure to save it somewhere on your computer. And that's going to be it for today's video. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe. And here are some other videos that you might like. As always, thank you all for watching. Until next time.